You know, I've spent a lot of time in a place that's really captured my heart. It's called Wartrace. It's in Tennessee. It's more than just a name on a map. It feels like a living, breathing story unfolding around you. It's a community built layer by layer over generations. I've walked through its grasses and listened to its secrets. I've even felt the echoes of its past in every brick and in every breeze. And now, I want to share that experience with you. Hi, I'm Heidi. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about Wartrace. They've got a whole lot of stories to tell here, so come take a walk with me. What we're about to explore isn't just a dry recounting of facts. It's more like stepping into the heart of a community, a place where the pace of life eases up a bit. You can almost feel the echoes of its past mixing with the voices of the people who live here today. And that's what I really wanted to focus on, meeting those individuals who are Wartrace. The families whose roots go way back, the talented folks keeping old traditions alive, and the ones who hold the town's history really close to their hearts.
I'm called Blossom. That is not a legal name, but that's what everybody knows me by because it was given to me by my father before he died in the war, who was killed in World War II before I was 2 years old, But here we are in Wartrace, Tennessee, a jewel of a little town. It's hard to know where you come from until you've been other places and come back. Now, that's where you will appreciate the best of what an area is, or the people, or what they've had to contend with over time. And all of my education, just about, and degree work and everything has been in historic preservation. And when I moved here, I bought the old Chocolate house, and it hadn't been occupied in 6 years. It was sitting there, just sitting there. And I wanted to get a house that I could have tourism come to. So there's where the old Chocolate house over there comes in. And it has a long history as a standalone in the front and back, and probably had a corridor through the middle, like a breezeway. We used to call them breezeways. There's even a diamond-shaped window that turns out in that crosswalk area that probably was that way because they needed ventilation, in the house. So I've discovered many things just by fixing the things that needed fixing and leaving everything else alone, and making surveys of what could be done to preserve a town like Wartrace in a mode that we could still make a living.
It's their stories, their memories, their genuine love for this place. That's the real core of what I hope to share. This is where you see how the stories of the past shape the present and how the promise of the future is being built, brick by brick, by the people who call Wartrace home. You'll see how a town can carry the weight of history, from the footsteps of the soldiers, to the graceful gait of the champion horses, from the busy days of the railroad, all the way to the quiet strength of its people, all woven together into a story that just deserves to be told. Let me introduce you to Miss Irma Stephens Troxler. She was born in 1922. The name Wartraceville, the town's earliest name, well, that's something that she's only heard about in stories, but here she is, vibrant as ever, nearing her 103rd year of life. To me, Irma embodies the enduring spirit of Wartrace. And just look at this image, the past and the future, right here. A tiny hand holding onto her finger. It's like It's like seeing that unbroken line of generations, the stories etched into the very soul of this town. The whispers carried on that breeze, just being passed down from a living legacy to the incredible promise of what's next.
I was born in Nashville at 1510 Clayton Avenue there. And when I was 2 or 3 years old, my daddy said that he wanted to get his children out of Nashville. So we moved to the farm on Knob Creek Road. And then I was the youngest of 5 children. And I know that my older sister graduated from high school in 1929, and I started that fall in 1929 in the new school, Brandon Memorial Building here in Wartrace. I went there 12 years because they built grade school and moved the lower grades out. And it's right funny, I thought I had senior English in the room that I started in first grade. And I graduated high school in 1941 and then went to Ward Belmont for 1 year, worked, and then was married in 1943. John Troxler, who and I were in the same class in high school together, and we were fortunate to have 2 daughters, and were married over 73 years.
I also want to introduce you to Don Gallagher. He's a former mayor, and his connection to Wartrace goes way back. His ancestors were actually among some of the very first families to settle here when the town was just beginning. His family's history is like a living map of Wartrace's evolution, full of stories that are still relevant today. Well, here's Don. I'll let him tell you about his history.
I think in 1852, when the railroad came through this section of land and the town was formed, a number of people who lived in Kellertown moved down to this area, and businesses were established and homes were built. Wartrace has this history of being a railroad town, and it's gone through different periods of prosperity and decline. I guess in the late 1800s, Wartrace had reached a period of a bit of prosperity, the early 1900s. And then I think in the last few years, it's being revitalized again.
Now, to really understand Wartrace, we need to delve into its history. To see how it grew and changed over time, let's start at the very beginning. When you look at Wartrace today, it has this established, charming feel to it, but its story stretches way back, even before the first train ever rolled through. All right, picture this. It's the early 1800s. This land was part of a grant from North Carolina, and it went to none other than Andrew Jackson. He actually came to this very place a couple of times in the mid-1800s. First, he was here to survey the land, to figure out all of its boundaries, and then he came back to start dividing it up and selling plots to the first settlers who made their homes along the Wartrace Creek. That was the name that the locals knew it by then. It must have been a good spot. The soil was fertile, and it was strategically located. Sort of made it a natural crossroads for the area. As more and more people started to settle here, the name of the place began to change a little, almost like the town that was trying to find its own identity. For a while there, folks just called it Wartraceville. You can almost imagine a more rugged, perhaps even a bit wilder feel to the place back then. Then, as the idea of the railroad coming closer became a reality, the name shifted, it became Wartrace, and some of the stories say that it was because of an etching in a tree that read Warpath. There for a while it was called Wartrace Depot, recognizing its growth and the importance as a place where goods and people move in and out. It wasn't until 1852 that it really became an established town, and then officially incorporated as Wartrace in 1853. Well, that railroad, the Iron Thread, connecting Nashville and Chattanooga, really became the guiding force for its growth. It's important to remember this land had its own history even before those railroad tracks were laid. The Cherokees lived here, and it's pretty incredible how quickly it transformed from those ancient paths to a vital hub for farming and trade. Even the name Wartrace itself has a hint of those earlier days, a whisper to those warriors who once walked this very ground.
Let me introduce you to Andy Gore. He's another Wartrace local who has a story to tell.
I'm here under a beautiful shade tree in downtown Wartrace, and I want to say a few words about the early founding of Wartrace. We owe this place basically to the Indians who live here. They were warriors among themselves, and they fought among themselves for territory, and that's where the name Wartrace came, because they went on the war path and there's friction and fighting there. However, there was a partnership between the Native Americans and Indians and the white settlers who moved in. The white settlers had the common sense to know that cooperation and collaboration with the Indians was essential to everyone's survival. And so that eased the transition between early 1800s until the 1825 to 35, when unfortunately Native Americans were exiled to Oklahoma. And that's a matter of history. But Wartrace owes its beginning to a good partnership with very special Indian tribes who were warriors and were leaders in their day.
Now, when the railroad finally arrived, it was like injecting a whole new energy into Wartrace. Suddenly, you started seeing these really handsome brick buildings going up along the street, a real sign of the prosperity that the railroad brought. There was this leather shop, and get this, they even made the famous saddle that was used in Gone with the Wind, and a furniture maker who, believe it or not, would later go on to become the founder of one of the most sought-after guitar companies in music history. We're going to definitely go into that just a little bit more later.
But as Wartrace grew, it wasn't just about business. There was ambition here too.
Mills and factories started operating, schools were built to educate the growing population, and even a surprising number of banks. Can you imagine 5 different banks over the years? The very first one opened its doors back in 1882, and then you had the official Bank of Wartrace and the National Bank of Wartrace, which was so important to the local economy that it even printed its own money. Some of those old bank vaults, well, they're still around today. That's a tangible link to the past. Education was clearly a priority for the folks in Wartrace. The first schools started around 1860, academies that played a crucial role in shaping the future of the town. Interestingly, the earliest known finishing school for women in Wartrace started in 1866, called the Ingleside Female Boarding School. And then there was the Brandon Training School, which had a reputation for its high-quality education.
A lot of people today still remember the Wartrace High School and the Wartrace Elementary School, where they were
really laying the groundwork for future generations and fostering a community that valued learning and progress.
I'd walk to school some days when I wasn't ready to go, when my daddy would take my stepmother who taught, and I had to walk. Well, the school was across the railroad track, and you turn like you go toward Bell Buckle. It was down that way. 8 good grades, I guess. And I more or less did have to study to do that. I wasn't a valedictorian or anything like that, but I did have pretty good grades. Well, I will say that both of my sisters and I took piano lessons. And then one of my sisters, when she was in high school, they had an orchestra and she played the saxophone. And I took piano. And the teacher said, keep a record of how much you practice. And I kept a record of it, and I got the prize, and it was a little gold harp, a little pen. And just recently, I still had it all these years, and then I gave it to a great-granddaughter who takes piano.
And to keep everyone informed and connected, Wartrace even had its own newspapers. 9 different publications over this entire time. The earliest one we know for sure was called The Sword. And then you had papers like the Wartrace Graphic and the Wartrace News, all documenting the daily lives and significant events that happened in the town and, surrounding areas. Even amid impressive growth and progress, Wartrace found itself directly in the path of the nation's most profound conflict, the American Civil War. It cast a long and undeniable shadow over this community. Its strategic location along the crucial Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad transformed Wartrace into a vital artery for both Union and Confederate forces. The strategic importance of Wartrace ensured that these very grounds witnessed several military engagements. On April 11, 1862, the Wartrace skirmish dramatically illustrated this for us. Imagine nearly 600 Union soldiers, including 197 volunteers from the 42nd Indiana Infantry, encamped here to secure the vital railway tracks. Their sleep was then shattered by a sudden dawn attack from 200 Confederate troops led by Lieutenant Colonel Starnes of the 8th Tennessee Cavalry. The ensuing chaos was so profound, it temporarily brought all railway operations to a standstill. Later in the war, following the brutal Battle of Stones River, Confederate General William J. Hardee recognized Wartrace's strategic value, establishing his headquarters right here. Further skirmishes flared up in the area, including engagements on September 6, 1863, and again just a month later on October 6th. So, as you walk through the streets of Wartrace today, understand that you're treading on ground that bore witness to truly pivotal moments during a deeply divided nation. It's a sobering thought. The echoes of those tumultuous times still resonate in the very soil beneath our feet, just as the memories of those who lived through it linger in the stories passed down to us. And speaking of those stories, let's hear from Andy, who carries his own vivid memories of the tales he heard as a child.
This potbelly stove really brings back memories. Hi, I'm Andy Gore, and I grew up in this garage, the Gore Brothers garage, and I have such fond memories. The memories are centered around the people who were here around the stove and told of their life experiences, particularly veterans of World War I. That was at the time, and I heard really riveting stories about what it was like to be in the trenches in the war and being gassed. Actually, he was the father of a friend of mine. But in any event, and then later on, as I began to appreciate history more, I discovered that one of the attendees here, a little male attendees, was a surviving Civil War victim, believe it or not. In the late 40s, he was still alive, living in Wartrace. And what a story he had to tell. Everything would get hushed when he talked. The guy had his deal. Later on, when I was a teenager, this shop became more important in my personal development. And I became a gearhead, so to speak. Built the high performance engines, in fact, right here, which set the stage for me later in life to become an engineer, and then later and become involved in the aerospace industry for jet engines and rocket engines. So my dream, I fulfilled my dream. That started here around the pot-bellied stove.
Wow, Andy's memories around that pot-bellied stove, listening to tales of a war that shaped this land. It makes you think that even after conflict, life finds a way to heal and rebuild. In the late 1800s, Wartrace itself became known as a place of healing, drawing visitors to its sulfur springs. But as the 20th century dawned, a new chapter began to define Wartrace, one built on grace and power, the rise of its equine legacy. Early 1900s saw Wartrace blossom into something truly special, the heart of Tennessee's horse country. The establishment of the Wartrace Horse Show in 1906 signaled the beginning of this era, followed by the iconic Walking Horse Hotel in 1917, both laying the groundwork for what would become the Tennessee Walking Horse National Celebration in September of 1939. The smooth, elegant gait of the Tennessee walking horse isn't just a breed. It's woven into the very identity of Wartrace. Born and bred in these fields, this magnificent animal earned Wartrace the proud title, the cradle of the Tennessee walking horse. And among all the champions who have graced these grounds, one name still echoes with special reverence: Strolling Jim, the very first world's champion Tennessee walking horse, who lived and breathed the air of Wartrace from 1936 until 1957. He had a wonderful legacy, a lot like Wartrace's.
And the legend of Strolling Jim? He wasn't just a name in the history books, he was a real presence in Wartrace, a part of the everyday lives of its people. Folks here have their own special memories of him, like Andy, who remembers a truly unique experience with this wonderful champion.
I never dreamed that I would see this much about walking horses in Wartrace. It's a testimony to the strength of the culture of the Tennessee walking horses. And I'm pleased to see this, and I'd like to provide my support, enthusiasm for the continuation going forward. But before I talking about that, I can't resist talking about Strolling Jim. My friend Bill Couillard and I, who lived in the hotel with his family, we got to ride Strolling Jim a couple of times. Now, you talking about a treat for a young boy. That was it. It doesn't get any better than that. Now, the other horse we knew was Go Boy Shadow, that was kept out on the Paget farm. Beautiful animal, beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. And all the people that I knew who were associated with the walking horse business, including William Henry Hammer Davis, who was the founder of the walking horse movement. It was a major part of living in Wartrace and a major part of my life. To start with, it's all about Strolling Jim. Strolling Jim, as you know, was the first champion, but Strolling Jim lived in his later years in a stable behind the hotel. And as a young kid, my friend who lived in the hotel and I got to ride Strolling Jim, a big memory of my life.
And I'll let Miss Irma tell you about seeing Strolling Jim in a more everyday setting, just walking down the streets with Mr. Carruthers.
And I went to the first two celebrations.
Well, good. Yay.
My daddy getting box seats.
You remember
Yeah,
the Streeter,
yeah,
Coley Streeter, and
yeah.
Sun Streeter?
Yeah.
The Sun Streeter trained horses,
Yeah.
and he rode horses
I
around town.
I remember Floyd Carruthers riding Strolling Jim.
Oh, really?
On the old street. Well, I can't say it. Anyway, it was up in front of my house.
Okay, I don't remember him, but I remember.
No, you're younger.
Yeah, but I remember
Oh,
Sun Streeter because he trained walking horses, and he'd ride on a Wartrace with a horse. I think he'd promised every kid in town a pony for Christmas at some point in time.
Moments like Miss Irma's, those everyday glimpses of a legend, they paint a picture of a close-knit community, a town where even champions were part of the fabric of everyday life. And that sense of community, that ability to find joy and connection, even during challenging times, really defines Wartrace. Think about it. Even as the nation grappled with the hardships of the Great Depression, Wartrace held its own. You read the old newspapers and you see a town that was still very vibrant. The Walking Horse Hotel remained a gathering place. The horse shows still drew crowds, eager for excitement. And local businesses, through sheer grit, kept their doors open. There was a real spirit of pulling together, a resilience that saw them through those tough years. And it wasn't all just about getting by. There was also a sense of community spirit that manifested in other ways. I heard stories about a carnival or fair that would come into town, a real highlight, a chance for everyone to come together and forget their troubles for a while. And it sounds like it was quite the event, even featuring a baby beauty contest. Here, I'll let the ones who were there tell you a little bit about it. Just listen.
It's some of my earliest memories of Wartrace when I was growing up here. Really involved just playing with other kids. You know, Wartrace is such an ideal place to grow up in. I was born in 47, so late 40s, early 50s. It was pretty easy to get around and go places and do things. And there were a lot of kids about my age here in Wartrace, so we did a lot of fishing together and going down to the creek and swimming and that sort of thing. I can remember I was probably about, 5 or 6 years old. There used to be a carnival that would come to Wartrace, set a Ferris wheel up on the square in Wartrace. And my brother and I wanted to go really bad. So it was just an ideal time to grow up and a lot of fond memories.
Carnival? Oh, well, the biggest thing I remember that, of course, I used to ride the swings. But we'd go by this fella and he was wanting to get your picture made, you know. He said, come have your picture made. You never know how you let you have your picture took. It's funny how you remember all the things.
I know. Those little things
things,
that stick out in your mind.
And beyond these cherished moments of community fun, Wartrace also quietly nurtured a deeper artistic soul, a wellspring of creativity that manifested in unexpected and enduring ways, often through the skilled hands of the artists. The spirit of collaboration almost always fueled the local economy. For example, I learned that the furniture maker, a craftsman skilled in shaping wood, would occasionally partner with one of the most talented leathersmiths in Wartrace. He was also mayor for a term. He was known by the name Keith Blakely. They were two artisans, masters of their respective materials, their skills complementing each other, contributing to the growing reputation of Wartrace craftsmanship. You know, it's interesting how skills and passions can evolve. When the demand for furniture wasn't high, the furniture maker, Don Gallagher's dad, actually started exploring the art of crafting fine guitars. It really became his true calling, and he built a thriving business around it. He poured his heart and soul into those instruments, and it wasn't long before his son Don became fascinated, learning right alongside him the intricate secrets of taking raw wood and transforming it into guitars with this incredible tone and beauty. And those guitars, they started to get noticed, really sought after by musicians far beyond Wartrace. Don grew up learning the craft of guitar making and became a real fixture in Wartrace. He served as an alderman and then got voted in as mayor, deeply invested in the life of this town, but his love for music never faded. In fact, in 1979, the very year that his father passed away, Don found a beautiful way to honor his memory and the musical spirit of Wartrace. He started the Pickin' and Fiddlers Convention. That event, as you might know, has grown into the vibrant Wartrace Music Fest that we still enjoy today.
I was first elected to office in Wartrace in 1979 on the board of aldermen. I served there for 6 years and mayor for 14 years and then county commissioner for another 12 years. And the ironic thing is, really, getting into politics was never a particular ambition of mine. At the time that I was elected to the board, my father had passed away in June of '79. I had been working to put together a music festival in Wartrace that August, and dedicated to the memory of my father. And I think in part because of that involvement of putting together first music festival and the involvement I had working with the town in relationship to that. And people suggesting, well, why don't you get on the board? It kind of encouraged me to do that. That's how I got into politics. I wasn't really looking to make such a long run in politics, but that's just the way things turned out. But it really, the thing that instigated it was the music festival and getting involved in that, and that led on to becoming involved in Wartrace politics.
You know, talking with Don, you really get a sense of how deeply connected he is to Wartrace's past, especially its musical roots. He shared this wonderful memory about a local musician named Kolya Streeter, and it turns out Kolya was one of the many who actually helped build Wartrace by working on those very railroad lines that came through town. And get this, Kolya and his brother George Jr., who they called Sut, would ride those trains, and they'd play their instruments in a way that people had never heard before. It was said that they always had at least one instrument with them, no matter where their work took them. And in his downtime, Kolya would always find a spot to play, becoming quite a well-known musician all the way from North Georgia up to Nashville. Even after Kolya passed, his family felt like his very spirit lived on in his favorite fiddle. It really speaks to that powerful connection between a musician and their instrument in a town like Wartrace. Let's hear Don tell about it in his own words.
In Wartrace, there were a black family by the name of Streeters, and that were very talented. Foley Streeter and Sut Streeter, and they played fiddle and guitar. And they had quite a reputation. They worked on the railroad, and they traveled up and down the line. And they played square dances in different places. And if you're a musician, you know that your instrument is something special, and your instrument kind of takes on a being of its own. When Foley passed away, I had a cousin that went to told his widow to see if he could buy the fiddle. And she said, oh, no, you can't sell the fiddle because soul is soul of that fiddle. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because an instrument takes on the personality of the person playing it, for sure. And so there is that long history of music in Wartrace that dates way back.
And from this same lineage of Wartrace artistry emerged another remarkable talent. Kolya Streeter's son, Vinoy. He channeled his creativity into a completely different medium. Known as the world-renowned wireman, Vinoy's art is in private galleries all over. And to own one of his original pieces is a dream of art collectors everywhere. His intricate sculptures captured the town spirit in a unique and endearing form. And here's where some of the threads of Wartrace's stories weave together in a very beautiful way. See, his uncle Sut was one of the horse trainers for the world-renowned strolling Jim. Vinoy's sculptures, well, the ones that are most famous, are the ones depicting Tennessee walking horses, honoring his father's brother, George Jr. The other art sculptures that capture a lot of attention during the art auctions are the ones playing instruments, and that is to honor his father, Kolya.
Oh, Mr. Vinoy Streeter, the wireman. I heard of him and I wanted to meet him, and I did. And he was just delightful. And I had a couple of his pieces that I would not part with, no matter how much money you gave me. And he was delightful. He worked on the street. I bought many things from him to give away. Now I wish I had them all back, but the people that have them still have them. And he was just a phenomenon, that's all. Watching him work was just an artistic treat, you know. And I'm sorry that he passed on quite as early as he did, but he left a legacy as far as art was concerned, because goodness, working from scratch like that, just take something that goes from here to that door and out on the street that long, and imagine in your head just creating something out of that, just turning it and twisting. It's beyond me. I've painted and I've done pottery and things like that, but believe me, some unique treasure of Tennessee.
So you see how the threads of Wartrace's story are intricately connected? The craftsmanship of furniture makers and leathersmiths, helping to increase the foundation for artistic innovation in Wartrace. A son's passion for music blossomed into a beloved annual tradition, and the spirit of a musician living on in his instrument, inspiring a unique form of visual art in his son. This is Wartrace, a town where history isn't just a memory. It's a living presence that informs and enriches its current and will shape its future.
We have some great festivals and fun times. And music plays at night here, and people love that. And so you have a good focus here for a number of different things. And like I say, I'm thrilled to death that the buildings are being preserved and added onto down that way. And we have a number of occasions to take to the streets and dance and do other things that you can watch for free and enjoy your day.
Today, Wartrace is a place where that history is palpable, where the stories of generations seem to seep from the very woodwork of its historic buildings. Yet, there's also a vibrant energy of growth and renewal. And just like Blossom was saying, the preservation of the lovingly restored homes that stand along the revitalized Main Street, where new shops and businesses, often with a modern take on that rustic charm, attract visitors and new residents alike. It's a seamless blend of honoring the past and embracing the future, a town that understands the value of its heritage while confidently stepping forward.
It has really picked up as far as retail is concerned, and also preserving the buildings. This facade across here gets commented on online as to how beautiful lit it is at night. I know this costs a little money to turn the lights on and leave them, but I think it's probably worth it to let people know we're here.
And just beyond the town center, the enduring beauty of the surrounding landscape continues to shape Wartrace. The rolling hills, the picturesque hay fields, and the long-standing family farms like Potts Farm, the Valley Home Farm, Garrison Valley Farm, and many others, remain a vital part of the community, their traditions stretching back generations. This deep connection to the land provides a sense of continuity, a reminder of the enduring rhythms of life in this special place.
I think a lot of people are discovering Tennessee, discovering what a great place it is to live. The climate is one of those reasons. Taxes is one of those reasons. Wartrace moving forward, the interrelationship between Wartrace and the county is kind of a difficult one, I think. Wartrace, Bell Buckle, Normandy would like to preserve their own individual identity. And yet I think there will be more and more pressure in years to come to form a more metropolitan government and centralized government that would give greater efficiency in providing public service to the people of Bedford County. Bedford County has had just a tremendous growth in the last 10 years. We've just recently passed the 50,000 mark in population, which is so different from what it was when I was a kid growing up. It's like a whole different place. And I'm sure another 50 years from now, it's going to be a whole different place from what it is today. But I think Wartrace will hopefully maintain its identity and its unique individuality as it goes into the future.
This sense of enduring community, this connection to the land and to each other, well, it's also reflected in the steadfast presence of Wartrace's churches. These aren't just buildings, they're cornerstones of the town's social and spiritual fabric, many with histories stretching back to Wartrace's earliest days. Take the Beth Salem Presbyterian Church, for instance. Its congregation formed all the way back in 1816, making it the oldest church in the area. The original building stood just southeast of where Wartrace is today. And as the story goes, after a fire claimed that first structure, the community rallied. A piece of land was donated within the growing town limits, and incredibly, the community moved the church itself, brick by painstaking brick, to its current location. Then, in 1889, those original bricks were lovingly incorporated into a larger building, creating the church that many Wartrace residents remember from their childhood, a true testament to the town's resilience and longevity.
I'm here at the Wartrace Presbyterian Church. This is where I grew up as a kid. It was a family tradition. My mom went to the Presbyterian Church in Normandy, and so therefore that's why we got to go into the Presbyterian Church here. But it was a great place. My inspiration from here is totally because of Mrs. Roberts, who was our Sunday school teacher. This lady did an extraordinary job of telling the Bible stories in a fashion that could connect with us kids. And quite honestly, all these years later, I still credit her as the foundation for my moral character and for my plan for life.
And Andy wasn't the only one. There were a lot of churches in Wartrace. Spirituality was a firm grounding point for the residents. These are just a few of them. There was the Missionary Baptist Church with its congregation organized in 1860, with the building itself erected in 1870, and the Methodist Episcopal Church, established and built in 1876. Each of these churches, along with the African American community and their Baptist Church and African Methodist Episcopal congregations, had their own meeting houses, further enriching the town's diverse spiritual landscape.
There was also the Wartrace Church of Christ, established a bit later in 1900. Their early gatherings were quite unique, meeting in the Wartrace Town Hall, and even, on occasion, in the front room of the old limestone rock jailhouse, a building that actually still stands today in Wartrace. They also met for a time at the Brandon Training School. Eventually, in 1909, they did build their own church, and that very same building still serves their congregation today. These churches, standing as a steadfast beacon throughout Wartrace's history, are powerful symbols of the enduring faith and strong community spirit that have always defined this town. And it's this very sense of evolution, of time leaving its mark, that became clear during a visit to the Wartrace Baptist Church with two individuals that you've already met, Miss Irma and former Mayor Don Gallagher. Their conversation offered a personal glimpse into how this particular church, a cornerstone of the community, has transformed over the years, mirroring broader changes within Wartrace itself.
But this church has a long history.
Mm-hmm. They had somewhere when it was built, but I don't remember now where it is.
I think it's on the marquee out front, isn't it?
Okay.
I want to say in the 1880s, but I don't remember exactly. It's interesting at a church like this and think of all the people who have worshiped here over the years.
Jamie, she was Bramley, older. I don't know if you remember her or not. But we had a little Sunday school class back there where I was, a child, just 4 or 5 years old. And my daddy gave me some money, to put in the offering. And she said, I wouldn't put it in. She said, I've got to buy coal oil. We had lamps, coal oil lamps. She kidded me about that for years. I know we would have church twice a month. We'd have Sunday school every Sunday, but twice a month. And then on some of those Sundays that we didn't have church, we'd go to the Methodist church. They had services though. And then I have been in the Presbyterian church too. I guess the Methodist church is still there, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Of course, the Presbyterian church was chapel. I don't know whether it's being used for anything now or not.
Just special events, I think. If you're using it for a wedding chapel.
Yeah.
And they used to have some community activities in the Presbyterian
one
church.
that was at Mooring Point, he was from Wartrace, and said she got married there.
Yeah. Well, because I preached at the Church of Christ here in Wartrace, but I've done some weddings at the Presbyterian church.
Okay.
Yeah, the chapel.
We used to come back from Tullahoma, and that once a year, around close to Christmas, they'd have a program.
Yes.
And
yes.
We've been to that at the Presbyterian.
Yeah.
John's daddy was Presbyterian, but he went with his mother out in the community at the Baptist church.
Okay.
And then when they moved to Wartrace, she said, well, you went with me all these years, I'll go with you now. So they did, and she played the piano at the Presbyterian church. Ms. C.M. Dean was a piano player when I was here. And I know she hit the piano so hard.
even within such spiritual anchors, time moves on. Things evolve. Traditions adapt. And the physical spaces themselves sometimes reflect those changes, morphing to meet the needs of new generations while still holding the echoes of their past. So, what is Wartrace? It's a story whispered on the gentle breezes that sweep across its rolling hills, a tale etched in the weathered bricks of its historic buildings. It began with the promise of connection, the rumble of the iron horse, the train that linked it to the wider world, bringing progress and prosperity. That very spirit of connection continues today, embodied in a different kind of iron horse. The local craft pizza place, a vibrant hub where the community gathers, sharing laughter, trivia nights, karaoke, and, most importantly, the live music of today's talented musicians. And speaking of that music, the legacy continues. Just as Wartrace nurtured musical legends in the past, it fosters them in the present. In fact, one of the talented musicians who brings that vibrant energy to the modern-day Iron Horse happens to be the father of the very baby that we saw earlier. A tangible link between the enduring artistic spirit of this town and its hopeful future. Through it all, the thread that binds Wartrace together is its people. From the endearing memories of Irma holding the promise of the future in her hand, to the deep roots of the families like Don Gallagher's, whose history is intertwined with the town's very beginnings, to the artistic soul of Vinoy, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary, and the countless others who've called this place their home. Their stories are the true heart of Wartrace. It's a town that honors its past, not as a static monument, but as a living presence that enriches the vibrant energy of its present. A place where the echoes of yesterday walk hand in hand with the dreams of tomorrow, fueled by the enduring spirit of connection, both on the iron horse rails of history and around the tables of the modern-day Iron Horse. And as we look towards that horizon, toward the future of Wartrace, perhaps we see it through the eyes of a new generation, standing at the threshold, acknowledging the rich tapestry of the past, yet stepping confidently into the light of what is yet to come. With the vibrant sounds of today's Iron Horse echoing in the air, the story of Wartrace is far from over. It continues to be written day by day by the hearts and hands and the music of all those who call this special place home.